Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be about one of my favorite cognitive function, NE versus introverted intuition, extroverted intuition, NE and I. Why I say it's so interesting is because it is where our hidden intuition lies. This is where we tap into our possibilities, gut instincts, trying to connect the dots. Now, for those MBTI types who are sensing function, which is you have S in your four letters, it doesn't mean that NI and NE has nothing to do with you. I think it's worth understanding how this cognitive function works, because ultimately, if you're able to identify this in other people, it can help you in the way you communicate with them, in the way you try to understand how they perceive things. After all, NINE, it's actually a perception function. It's how we perceive or how we gather information. Similarly to SE versus SI, which is introverted sensing, and extroverted sensing, which is more reality focused on the practical or the concrete matters. NE and I, it's more about intuition and how that shapes reality. If you're new to my channel, I hope you subscribe and do check out my playlist, because this video is within the playlist that is all about MBTI. And so it is being filmed and published in sequence. So I will highly suggest that if you have not seen the very first episode where I talk about how I discovered MBTI, the resources that I use, how I got into cognitive function, depth psychology, please watch those videos first in sequence so that this would make more sense. But those of you who are already familiar with MBTI and you just want to understand a bit better how does NI versus NE works, this video is going to be for you. There are people who just have this innate or this talent that they can see one's inevitable future, while some people just have more gut feelings about what would happen to the world in terms of how other people will be experiencing. NI is very much individual. NE is very much about the collective, conscious or unconscious. So it's extroverted intuition. If you look at my cognitive function video, I reference it a lot. Having a window that is open where you're looking on the outside. When you're looking on the outside, the things that you gather, it's more of different perspective rather than things that are closed in, the window that is closed, which is introverted function, so introverted intuition. All in all, NI and NE are just two ways the brain processes information that eventually will shape how we think, plan, and make decisions. It is not a decision-making function, that is thinking and feeling, TETI, FIFE. This is more of a perceiving, data gathering function. When I say data gathering, I know that it sounds more of a concrete SESI thing, but it's more about how do you perceive what is presented to you. It could be in a very abstract way or it could be in a very realistic way. In general, that is what I mean by perceiving data. So in the MBTI framework, or as Carl Jung in depth psychology rooted in it, it is categorized that there are two kinds of intuition. So introverted intuition, it is a singular, deep insight that is very much focused on the individual future outcome. So it's very narrow and deep in. Extroverted intuition, NE, it is actually an explosion. It is an explosion of possibilities, seeing multiple outcomes at once. So understanding how NI and NE works is going to be quite crucial when you're trying to understand how to work better with certain MBTI types, or even trying to understand your own MBTI type. Because if you actually understand how people perceive things and this is how they shape their reality and make decisions, and you master it enough and being aware enough on what kind of perceiving function that they use. Let's say a person uses a lot of NI versus somebody uses a lot. There are strategies and techniques that can help you to influence or even try to harmonize with them. Ultimately, the whole reason why we are understanding human psychology, personality type, yes, it is for us to gain more self-awareness. At the end of the day, it's also for you to be able to work with other people in a more harmonious way. Whether you want to call it harmonious or just more effective, it doesn't really matter. It is really just, I think whatever that we do in today's world, it involves some form of collaboration, some form of interaction, synchronicity with other people. Therefore, if you can cut the part about trying to figure them out, this is actually a good framework for you to put them into these categories. So what is intuition? So Carl Jung defined intuition as something that is unconscious, patterns, meaning, possibilities. It is very much the abstract, things that is not actualized yet, it's just a possibility. Unlike sensing, which is very much focused on the tangible, real-world data, intuition operates in the abstract. It is what will be, could be, rather than what is or what was. Sensing, people ask about what has happened before, what is real, is this really feasible? They need evidences and facts. Intuition asks, okay, we have facts, but what does it really mean, or what could it possibly mean? And a step ahead, intuition people, let's say you give them data, it is what it is, but they could think of the different perspectives or try to find a deeper meaning on what this data could actually mean. So I want you to take a moment and kind of reflect. Are you always thinking about possibilities, or you are the kind of person that really relies on real world data or even some past evidences to finalize what you have gathered? I would say that we do a bit of both. It really depends on what your individual MBTI type is. However, we would be leaning more towards one rather than the other, and I think often it's very hard to balance both. But the thing is, if you have a lot of awareness and you can capture when you're using a lot of NI or you're using a lot of NE, how do you use the different functions to balance it out? I think this is when the art of understanding each other or the art of communication becomes really impactful. So let's understand NI first. I would actually describe NI as the deep diver. It's very much inward focused. It processes information internally. Again, the window is closed. It's more focused internal, and it's filtering out unnecessary data and synthesizing only on one profound insight. So when I conduct MBTI workshop, I like to relate it to like a sniper, right? Versus a shotgun. A shotgun is an extroverted intuition where, you will hit different points, and it's massive, it's widespread. So it's different points, it could be different topic that is related or somewhat similar related. But NI is like a sniper. It is really looking long range, deep into what this one particular singular topic is all about. That's why it looks like NI is somebody that it has very strong willpower, and they are very determined to get to their end goal. And they are quite stubborn with it because they have already seen it through. Therefore, imagine you're using a sniper, you have a target that is very far ahead, but that is the only thing that you see, and that's the only thing that you know. Therefore, NI people seems to be those people that are always like trying to find out the truth. Although we can debate that this is also someone that is T, but NI is more about what they desire, their wants, which is why it's very difficult to convince a type that has very strong NI to do things differently or try to drop their desires or goals. So NI follows a single path to see what is the truth and the inevitable outcome. Therefore, a lot of NI users will say things like, I told you this was going to happen. For example, the INTJ is always being nicknamed the strategist, the architect, the one that plans everything ahead of time. It's like, do you not have a plan for something? Specifically, what do they want to achieve in the next 50 years? Or INFJ usually ends up being a therapist or a counselor who just really understand the desire and the motivation of someone even before really getting the person to express themselves. They can already see it through. There's actually a very funny meme on Instagram. If I find it, I'll attach it here, where the INFJ kind of is able to see through and predict the person's future, and therefore making them look a little bit like scary and intimidating. So what is the weakness of NI? As much as we talk a lot about their strength, being able to have foresight, long-range planning, very much determined and have a lot of willpower to achieve their desire. A strength always comes with a weakness. Because NI is like a sniper, their target is very much singular, therefore it can make them a little bit not so adaptable and flexible to finding different ways to achieve their goals. And sometimes in a discussion, if they are very much tapping into their NI, they could get very tunnel vision and have a very rigid belief in how things will turn out. So it's going to be very difficult for you to convince them otherwise. Obviously, it's not going to be as simple as using cognitive function to do that. There's a lot more to just using NE to balance out NI. Are you using your thinking or feeling function to relate to them so that they can break out from their very focused sniper shot that they have to get? So rigidness is definitely a thing. People are quite stubborn, and it's, like I said, it's quite difficult to change their perspective. So how would you encounter this is try to have a discussion and give them alternative perspective. But because they have already thought about this maybe 100 million times, see it through, they probably already thought about the perspective that you've thought about, and therefore they always have a counter argument or a point to tell you why it doesn't work because they have thought about it. And this is something I think it's quite prominent that I see when I deal with NI users. They can struggle with explaining their reasoning. They will just be missing parts where they cannot really justify or really help you understand, because their articulation of it is going to be quite difficult because it's something that they have gone through in their head for so many times, but it's not something that they practice in terms of articulating it. Therefore, trying to put it out there and make it relatable for people is going to be quite difficult. So sometimes the giveaway is that they will just say, I just know that this will happen. And they will say, trust me, this is what's going to happen. They will just go far, long shot that you'll be like, how do we jump into that conclusion? But for an NI user, their frames per second trying to use their NI is way faster than everybody else. People are still trying to take it step by step, focusing on what was and what is in order to get things done in a realistic way, but they've already went past that. Therefore, it can really be a strength because they plan ahead, they are able to foresee things that it could have gone wrong, they already have backup plan, they have a lot of plans just to make sure that they achieve their goals, which is always a good thing. Because they overthink, the necessary thinking has caused them to really overfixate about how you should get there. They can be very blinded by some things that happen in life that requires them to be flexible, which is why overusing it is definitely a weakness. So overfixation on the future can cause them to overlook present details, as the present moment is always changing. So whatever they have NI all the way through may not always be the most relevant. But the funny thing was, after understanding NI users, there's something about them that, because if you have in your hero function, so you are INFJ or INTJ, then you have SI in your demon function, which is technically your 8th function. This is in your shadow. It's beyond the 4. It is the remaining 4 in your shadow type. So if you have NI as your hero function, definitely at the very bottom, not your inferior function, but your demon function, you have it as your demon. And so this is where a lot of NI users, because they're so determined and laser focused about their desires, their want, and this is how they're gonna have their future, it's manifestation times 100, right? So this is where they get sick very easily. This is where they miss the real life. You are dehydrated, you're not eating enough, you are overeating, you are playing too many games, you are thinking about things. It's things that is happening in reality, they don't experience it. So that's why there are a lot of claims that NI users, they fall sick very easily, but they also quickly heal in very miraculous way because as how NI works. If I want to heal, I'm going to heal. Let's now understand extroverted intuition. So, are you an E user? This is the idea generator. I would say this is like the innovator, the one with the best ideas. Problem solvers. E works in very opposite ways compared to NI. NI is a sniper, NE is a shotgun. It expands outward instead of internalizing. Multiple connection that seemingly to a lot of people may not potentially connect, but they're able to find the lines to connect the dots that are being spread out. They are able to see multiple connections and possibilities simultaneously. And one thing to clarify about NE is about possibilities for other people. NI is about themselves. So NE is on brainstorming. They love a lot of creative environment where it's a bit chaotic, unpredictable, and they love adapting. So I think NE users, they cannot just stay in one place. They cannot work in a corporate world where it's 9 to 5 and it's very mundane. Users like ENFP, ENTP, these are the people that are truly unconventional. They have to work in ways where it's not going to bore them because they are always spitting out ideas. They need to problem solve. They need to have inspiration in order for them to spark their. So really, NE sees a web of possibilities. So NI focuses on their inward information. NE gathers information from the outer, the possible information of the outer. I think this is quite interesting in the workplace. I work with a lot of NI and NE users, and having them in a room, especially when we're talking about a project, problem solving, or trying to come up with a concept, that's the best part. The NI and the NE users, they really just feed off each other, right? Because one is very much like a subject matter expert, and the other one is just giving a lot of ideas, and then it's a beautiful battleground of ideas and possibilities. So, example, an ENTP usually ends up being an entrepreneur that is doing many different things. They own different businesses and they always have new concepts and ways to do things. And the ENFP writer example, they see infinite ways to tell a story and they're able to help people to narrate their story in, I would say, very colorful, inspirational ways because they can see how people will want to perceive it. It's the possibilities of what other people want. Therefore, I think if you have an ENTP, an ENFP in your team, it's something to appreciate because these are the people that always bring newness and the unconventional ways to do things to the table. So with a lot of strength, it also comes with weakness depending on how it's being utilized and how often it's being utilized. While NE is great for generating a lot of ideas, one of their weak points is that they lack focus. Unlike the sniper, it's very much determined to get to the end goal. The NE is very much distracted. Because they are so good at generating ideas, right? So many things can interest them to the point that they have commitment issues. And so they have difficulty following through things that they have generated for probably a few months ago. So example, a struggle that an ENTP or ENFP manager would have would be, let's say they have a team, right? They come up with a brilliant concept or idea to do things. So he or she manages to inspire the team to, hey, let's do this new thing. Like they sold the idea, it's novelty, everybody's excited to do it. But then as weeks and months goes by, if they tap into the NE all the time, they could think of infinite ways to do it. So they forget the initial concept that they have sold to the team. So it makes it very disruptive for their team members to follow through them because they've already planned all the execution, the things along the way, but then the NE user is like, hey, you know what, let's scrap the idea. Oh, but what about the things we've done the past few months? No, let's try a new one. So what ends up becoming the result of it is that there's never a finished project. It's always restarting a project. So that can be a big problem, which is why users, as much as they get to their end goal, they are very stubborn, and sometimes when unforeseen things happens and then the NI couldn't adapt, they also don't achieve their goal. And then for NE, although they can adapt so much, they adapt so much to the point that they have no commitment to see through things that maybe actually require more time to see results. So sometimes NE users, I think one of the most common feedback that I got was they unconsciously make things very overcomplicated by adding a lot of layers rather than simplifying it. So for those of you who are ENFP, ENTP, you might want to be very careful on how you do this if you are managing a team of people. As much as you can make things very exciting for your team members or your organization, and you bring a lot of novelty ideas and innovation, you have to do it in a way where it is also being able to actualize it, being able to have some commitment to it, and being very aware of, do I really want to get distracted right now? I think that's a question that you have to always ask yourself. So for the NE users, a question for you. Do you struggle to focus on one thing? Now, how to use NE and NI effectively? So if you are ENTP, ENFP, INTJ, INFJ, even INFP, if you have NI or NE in your cognitive function, so introverted intuition and extroverted intuition, how can you use them effectively? Because as we know, if you overuse something, there's always a price to pay. It is finding a sort of balance and knowing how it's being utilized is going to help you to navigate your way when it comes to having more self-awareness with your MBTI type and having the awareness of others and being able to collaborate with others more effectively. So if you know that you have strong NI, use this to develop a clear long-term vision about your desires, your goals. You can help people who are very distracted about coming up with a plan that helps them to see, okay, they are phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. How do I get to my end goal? NI users are generally quite good at that. If you have strong NI, I highly suggest that you take on some effective communication, maybe public speaking. It's just basically how to communicate or articulate your insights so other people can understand them. I have strong NI, and I must say that when I was younger, I always have a lot of thoughts in my head and ideas, and being able to imagine how things will turn out and having that very strong gut feeling. But then I'm unable to articulate it, which frustrates me a lot. So it's pretty frustrating, especially when you're an NI user and you cannot help people to see your perspective. Because a lot of times, NI users, we spend a lot of our mental energy thinking about what would happen, how can it happen. That's why it's a very expensive thing. Usually, it's almost like fortune teller. I'm able to tell you what's going to happen in the future. But then if you're unable to back it up with substantial evidences, information, being able to articulate it, the why, the how, then it's very hard for people to see your imagination or what you're trying to achieve. An advice for NI users is stay open to alternative viewpoints and avoid rigidity. Avoid being rigid and stubborn. So this is the advice for INFJ, INTJ, ENTJ, even ENFJ. For the types that I've just mentioned, you have NI in your first function or the second function, so you use it a little bit more often. You have to be careful about being too stubborn or rigid with what you want or your perspective or how you want to do things. So stay open to alternative viewpoints because, like I said, NI people, they tend to lose out on current reality. So staying true to your own perspective on how things are done is not going to be the smartest thing that you're going to do. So if NI users able to be adaptable, I think this is when it becomes really like a superpower. If you have strong NE, so these are the types such as INFP, INTP, ENTP, ENFP. Amazed that I can remember all of this. So strong NE means that you always think about the possibilities, the external possibilities, not the internal, the shotgun. It's about metaphysics, it's about exploration. So I think for you, because you can generate a lot of ideas, you are literally the idea generator. It's very important that you have a tool or a framework to organize your ideas visually, use mind maps, use a list, draw on the board and show people how your train of thoughts go. Because when you don't show them and you just spit out all your ideas, right, it can cause a lot of mental fog and chaos for people who, especially the S type. I'm very sure people like ISTJ, they're gonna vomit when they hear the NE speak about their ideas, because they'll be like, where's all these ideas coming from? Doesn't even make sense. So I think having a tool or being able to do mind mapping is going to be very useful for you. And also learn to prioritize your ideas. I know that you have a lot of brilliant ideas, but instead of trying to chase all of them, really be disciplined and realistic with yourself that, hey, if I do not prioritize them, I'm never going to see through any of my brilliant ideas, which is going to be a waste of time if you can't actualize it. So prioritization is going to be your best bet. Balance your ideas with execution. At the end of the day, execution is king. Action is king. If you do not set deadlines and you don't try to come up with an action plan, your beautiful ideas are just ideas. It's not going to work out. And to summarize, organize your ideas with a mind mapping. Use a tool to help you to visualize it so that most people will understand it. Learn how to prioritize all your beautiful ideas. And finally, once you prioritize it, find a way where you can set deadlines, action plans that will make it tangible. We want the brilliant ideas to come into fruition. So this is how you master your intuition. Worst case scenario, just NI/NE users partner with SI/SE user and get them to vet through your ideas. At least for me, I think I've taken this shortcut where if I use too much of my NE or NI, I always know which SI or SE user, like a ISTJ or a ISFJ or ISFP or ISTP, to get them to challenge my idea and give me all the realistic questions that I never think about. So whether you NE or NI, I think finding a partner that has strong SI or SE is going to help you out. So conclusion, I and NE are powerful ways to perceive reality. But I think the key message would be, if you rely on NI, you are a deep diver, you are a subject matter expert, and you really see profound insights and things. Therefore, having a lot of connection and deep talks with an NI user is definitely something that is priceless, I must say. But at the same time, try to be open-minded and try not to always NI yourself, because at the end of the day, there's so many other things for you to experience in life. Yes, you are an idea generator. The world needs more of these people for sure, because you see infinite possibilities where people are just focused on reality and the past, which makes life very much depressing sometimes. But the NE kind of brings spice to life. So neither is better or worse, but for NE users, at the end of the day, as much as you can ignite people with new ways to see things, really find a tool or be disciplined about how you are going to actualize it. So which one do you use more of? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know if this lecture is insightful about understanding NI and NE. Hopefully you're able to get closer to the truth of whether you use more NI or NE, and give you some awareness about how you should be using these two functions. Thank you guys for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.